Well, I'm sitting here with Pastor Mark. He and I did this yesterday and completely recorded a really good conversation that you're never going to get to hear.
It was a good conversation.
It was fantastic. You'll get a revision of it. So maybe this one will actually end up being better. But my microphone decided to stop working halfway through and didn't realize it until we were done. So we're praying that this will connect through. Mark, what we're going to talk about again today is your experience with personal evangelism and missions, and not just your experience with it, but how we can do it or value it wherever we are.
Yeah, right on.
So I have a list of questions. Yesterday we didn't really go through much of the questions, but I'm okay with that. So why don't you start with telling us about your experience in missions?
All right. Well, I'm going to start this a little different than I did yesterday.
Okay. Well, they don't know how you started it. Maybe I'll sneak in some snippets. I doubt it.
I would say when I was a teenager,
okay,
and they say, well, what are you going to do after high school? There was a point at which I thought to myself, I just want to serve God. I was a pretty serious believer by that point. I'd already lost my sister to a car accident, and so had a pretty interesting view on the world. Like, I want to do things that matter.
Yeah.
You never know when it might be your last day, you know? So that being said, after high school, I went on the internet, which was new back then.
Ooh.
And I found the longest missionary program I could that would accept someone my age, and that was Youth with a Mission.
Yeah.
And their entry-level thing was about a 3-month lecture phase and 2 to 3 months of outreach. And that was way longer than I could get anywhere else. Mm-hmm. Most places were, a few months of training and then maybe a week or two of outreach.
Yeah.
So I went to Youth with a Mission. There's a lot of Youth with a Mission campuses.
They're all over the place. It's a great organization.
So I went to the one in Kona, Hawaii.
Yeah.
It's actually the biggest one in the world.
Yeah.
It wasn't just because it was in Hawaii, but I was not hating the idea.
No, it sounds good.
3 months in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And that was where I felt like I had got a call to missionary work, right? There was a point in there where they ask you, they say, why don't you pray and ask God, is there a country that you have on your heart for me? And that was when I felt the call to Turkey. And so this is going to feel like a rerun. We talked about this yesterday.
It is, because yesterday we made all these jokes about Turkey and Thanksgiving and stuff, and it just doesn't seem appropriate now. Are we allowed to make the same jokes?
Yeah. So anyway, I couldn't find the classroom there. It was a pavilion. It had a ceiling. It had the front of the class had like a wall, and then the rest was open air. And that whole wall was a mural of a world map, right? So I went up to the mural and I had to find Turkey in the first place. Laid my hand on Turkey and was praying and asking God about if that's where he wants me to kind of aim my heart, right? That was where I first got the call to that nation.
Now, why did you choose specifically Turkey to lay your hands on? What spurred that?
When I was praying and asking God, is there a country you have on your heart? I felt Turkey.
Turkey came to your mind.
Yes, like that nation specifically. Okay. Like at that point, I wouldn't have been that surprised if there wasn't a country named Turkey, and I was like, oh man, I'm such an idiot. Yeah. But thankfully I was like, Turkey, that's a place, right? And I had to go kind of find it over there. And I laid my hand on it. And, little did I know that Elizabeth, who was not yet my wife, that was where I met her. She had also felt like she should be praying for Turkey. So
yeah,
we'll fast forward a little while. Elizabeth and I met in that missionary training school. The outreach phase, I didn't get to go to Turkey then. That school went to Cambodia. That's where I went. And Fiji, that's where Elizabeth went. And I always feel like I have to say, it sounds like Fiji would be a vacation destination. But when we went, Fiji was by far the more difficult location.
No, I know missionaries in Fiji. It's not the easiest place. They went from Nepal to Fiji.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a lot more sickness. There's, I think, a lot more spiritual warfare. that we saw. And I'm sure there's spiritual warfare everywhere, but they really saw it, in crazy ways there. But anyway, we'll fast forward some more. We got married about a year after that. Fast forward a little ways after that, and we went to Turkey.
Okay.
So in Turkey, it's a country of about 70 million people, and it's about the size of Texas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Assuming that everyone else knows as much as I knew about Turkey, which was nothing, right? So that's about the land mass you're talking about. Within that 70 million people, at the time, there was, I think, 4,000 believers.
Okay.
And so it was 0.0000 something percent.
Very, very small.
Yeah. So in Istanbul's the city where we were.
Not Istanbul. I know we joked about that yesterday.
Yeah, not Istanbul.
But I want to be clear
Istanbul.
because when we first met, a couple of years ago, and you told me Istanbul was where you were, I didn't know where you were talking about at first. It took me a second.
Yeah. So Turkish has a letter that's I with a dot, and it's always a long E sound. And even the capital one, it's a big old capital I with it. It's still got the dot.
Yeah.
So it's an adjustment to make when you're over there. And they've got another one, I with no dot. So, but this is Istanbul.
Okay.
It's got almost a quarter of the entire country's population. So it's the only place in the country where you're actually going to find like more than one church that you could reasonably have heard about and make it to.
Okay.
So when we were in Istanbul, if you went to the international church, you'll meet other Christians. And outside of there, you're never going to meet another Christian. The statistics, when you meet someone, they're a Muslim. There's no one else there, So that means that a lot of the folks there, or most of them, the vast majority, are suspicious of Christians. There's a small chance they might want to harm you, but probably not.
Mm-hmm.
And what it was like over there is we had to hear from them about what they believed. Oh man, this is difficult doing the same conversation twice because I'm not sure what I've already said.
That's okay. Let me interject something there, something I didn't say yesterday in thinking about Turkey. Because we talked some about how you just mentioned that there are a lot of Muslims over there.
There are.
Yesterday we did mention that in Turkey, the national religion, the state religion is Islam.
It sure is.
Whereas the surrounding countries around them, Greece and whatnot, it's going to be Greek Orthodox.
Right.
But Turkey is an interesting place because in Turkey, there are a lot of founding cities to our faith,
right?
To the Christian faith. So even though it's more commonly seen as an Islam country now, this is where Colossae was for Colossians. You have Laodicea, which is one of the cities that the 7 letters were written to in Revelation. There are several through
There's
there.
a lot. Yeah, there's places in the Bible that you see in Turkey.
Yes.
I want to say all 7 cities that
I believe so.
From the letters and Revelations are all within Turkey. Antioch, which is now Antakya, but it's pretty similar. Where believers were first called Christians. And even there in the city of Istanbul, which was formerly Constantinople, you've got the Hagia Sophia, which was this was a huge part of the ancient faith, So like Constantinople was like the Rome of Eastern Christianity, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of Christian history.
A lot of Christian history.
There have been wars fought that went back and forth. So it's not like it was always Muslim. It's gone back and forth.
Right.
And at one point, they even had a people exchange with Greece, where Turkey said, we're going to give you all of our Christians because we're a Muslim nation. And Greece said, we're going to give you all of our Muslims. And so people were forced to be relocated. And that's why there's not even a little bit of Christians, because if you were a Christian, you got kicked out of the country.
Right. Go to Greece.
Yeah.
Go to Greece.
And that was a while ago. I don't remember the date.
Yeah.
So the church has had to rebuild from nothing. That's why it's so small. It's like unusually small.
Sure.
Yeah. And now Turkey is also one of the only places in the world where you find nominal Muslims. People that are Muslim on paper, but they don't really take it that seriously. Most of the time when we think of Muslims, they're very religious. So in Turkey, you really have to meet someone and you have to hear about their faith to know what it is. You can't just assume that they practice Islam the way that you understand it. You can get a lot from their appearance. So, for example, if someone had a beard like yours,
then they looked good.
Yes, they looked very handsome, very yakashukla, as they would say there.
Okay.
But a big full beard usually means you're fundamental Muslim,
Okay.
right? And if you were clean shaven and you had the mustache, then that usually means you're like a military man. So
Okay.
nationalistic military background. If you're clean shaven, that usually means you're more Western. And so you can get a little bit from people's looks, but it's not 100%.
Sure.
So you got to hear about stuff, and people will tell you about their life, and then you can kind of understand more of how they're going to relate to Jesus. One thing that we did talk about yesterday that I think is really cool is that at any point in your relationship with someone, if they can just start reading the Bible, if they could just start praying to Jesus, then you don't have to really worry that Islam was going to win. Because, come to find out, it's just like it says in the book, the scriptures are full of God's life. When people start reading the scriptures, they light up, they feel it. They'll tell you, I was reading this scripture and it was like my heart came alive. And you're like, oh, like it really happened, And sometimes people say, well, I've been praying, and I actually started praying to Jesus. And they'll come alive because he is the real God.
Right.
His truth, it comes through the scriptures. You don't have to make it happen. The magic happens on its own. God does everything.
Right.
Which is really cool.
I was actually, you know how I like to listen to and watch a lot of apologetics videos, and I was listening to one just this morning on my way to and from physical therapy for my neck, and this was a gentleman who came out of Islam and converted to Christianity, and he said he was talking about his testimony and how it really came about that he finally met a Christian who ended up becoming his best friend, who understood apologetics, who knew how to take a stand for his faith. Because before then he just wiped the floor with other Christians who would say, but he was also impressed that they were at least willing to say, do you know Jesus?
Yeah.
Because he didn't understand why Christians who say, if you don't know Jesus, you're going to hell, never talk to people about Jesus. He's not wrong about that. But one thing that he said was that as you begin to look at the evidence between the two different, that fundamental to Christianity is the belief that Jesus is God.
Yes.
Fundamental that he did actually historically die on the cross.
Yes.
And that he rose from the grave, conquering death, right? Those three things are absolutely fundamental.
Those are among the essentials. If you don't, if there's any one of those that you don't believe,
I don't even know if I'd say among the essentials. They are. If you don't believe any one of those, I don't know that you can really say you're a Christian, right? That's it. But in Islam, they do not believe Jesus was God.
Nope.
They do not believe that he historically died on the cross, and they do not believe that he rose from the dead. And so his point was that the world likes to say these religions are really basically the same, but they are not. Those are not. Diametrically opposed to one another. You can't have one or the other and the other. Yeah. So
that's totally true. Like you're saying, in Islam, they have a character called Jesus. And they say, oh, it's the same Jesus that Christians believe in, but it's not, because they don't believe he's God.
Right.
So over there, Christians they'll often say Isa Messi. Isa is the name for Jesus. And they'll say, oh, we know about Isa. He's a prophet.
Right, because that's how Islam, Muslims will look at him and just say he was a prophet.
Yeah. Isa Masih, Jesus the Messiah, that a Muslim's not going to be so happy about. That's not in agreement with their beliefs.
Right.
So even now, I mean, it's been a while since I've been over there.
Mm-hmm.
But even now, when we talk about Jesus's prophet role, there's something in me that tenses up a little bit, because even now I go, he's not just a prophet, guys.
He's more than that.
He's not just a prophet. He is a prophet, but he's prophet, he's priest, he's king.
Mm-hmm.
He is the Son of God. And you can't say he's just a prophet, because he's not,
Mm-hmm.
And also in Islam, prophet kind of means something different. Prophet is like any of the major characters are considered
Mm-hmm.
prophets.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a lot of times when we say someone, like we talk about someone like Noah, you're like, well, he's not doing a lot of, like, there's not prophetic writings from Noah. He's a character in the Bible. Well, like, that's not the word I'm looking for. It's like forefathers, but there's another.
Yeah, I mean, well, if you take Noah, for example, the heart of prophecy, first of all, you get into Revelation, it says the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. So it's
Yes.
all about Jesus and everything we just said, that Jesus is God, that he died on the cross for our sins, and that he rose from the grave. Now, New Testament onward, if you don't have those things involved in prophecy and there's no belief in that, is not prophecy.
Yeah.
But in the Old Testament, it was the calling people out of their sin,
Right.
to find restoration back to God, in redemption, and saying, if you don't do this, then this is what's going to happen. It's not going to go well for you. So Noah, it never says that he went around calling people out. Right. Like we talk about that in like the children's Bible stories, that everybody was all angry and making fun of them. You never see that in scripture at all. You don't ever get that. So that is curious to them that they would say he was a prophet. I don't know that he really fulfilled the role of prophet, or at least it doesn't say that he did.
Yeah, we would just think him as one of the fathers, one of the early examples of a man of God.
Yeah. Yeah. And they put Jesus in the same category.
Yeah. They'll say, oh, Abraham, they have Abraham.
Yeah.
They have Noah, and they lump Jesus in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have Muhammad, and Muhammad is the highest one. He's way higher than Jesus on their scale.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not very similar. We're like,
Not at all.
like to a believer, Muhammad, he's not in there, and the things he said are some of them are opposed to the principles of the Bible.
Which is why yesterday you mentioned that when you would share your faith, and have a relationship with them, and that if they were to convert, if they walked away from their Islamic beliefs,
right,
that it was more than just, I believe this now. It wasn't this wishy-washy thing, but it was truly you're giving up everything else in life, and sacrificing relationships and everything else. Do you want to speak some into that?
Yeah. Well, if we can compare it to here, if I met someone and that person says they're an atheist and then they come to faith in Jesus, not every single thing in their life is going to change.
Yeah, that's probably
some
true.
of it will, and some of the relationships will surely be affected. If I were in Turkey and someone just a normal, salt of the earth, regular old Turk, right? Just a good guy, and he becomes a Christian, then everything is going to change in his life, because unemployment is such a big issue over there. There's always 10 other people that want your job, and if you're a Christian and the other 9 guys are Muslim, you're going to lose your job, and they're going to put a Muslim there, not because they hate Christians, but because a Christian's going to make them uncomfortable, and they're going to be getting pressure from their bosses and such. If you're a guy without a job who cannot provide, Turkey is just modern enough that your wife may leave you and say, I need a husband who can provide, and me and the kids are leaving. And so it's not uncommon to meet a Christian man over there who says, oh, well, I lost my job, my family left me, and really they've lost a lot. They've sacrificed a lot for their faith. And I would say over in Turkey, and probably it's true in a lot of the Muslim world, as soon as someone puts their faith in Jesus, there's not an immediate pressure to publicly say, I'm a Christian and not a Muslim. that could take months or
Hmm.
years, you know? And when you're baptized, when you make that public affirmation of faith, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And to a Muslim, a lot of the concepts are going to run parallel. They're going to say, "Oh, well, I still serve God the way I've always served God, but now I know who he really is."
Right.
So there's even going to be people within the faith that still consider themselves Muslim, because Muslim is not an against Jesus concept to them. They're going to say, "Oh, no, this is how I've learned who God is, and now I know who God really is." And then the label might not even change.
Yeah, I mean, even the language of the prayers might even be similar because you're still
Right.
asking God to help lead you and guide you and to care for your day and to provide
Mhm.
and everything else.
Yeah.
You're just directing it at God.
Yes. So the evangelism is it's a really interesting subject. It's as different as people are different.
Yeah. One thing that we mentioned yesterday with the evangelism piece is first of all that it really is about life together.
Mm-hmm.
It's being involved in each other's lives. It's not this expectation that you're going to go out and you're going to say something on a soapbox out there on a street corner,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden masses of people are just going to come to you. Now that happened with Pentecost,
Right.
right? With Peter doing that, he went out and he preached, and thousands of people came to know. But the Holy Spirit was moving in a very forcible way,
Yeah.
right? Whereas what we've been called to do is to go and make disciples. To make disciples, you have to have relationship
Right.
with them, and so that's something that you can do if you go overseas to do mission work. It's something that you can do here,
Mm-hmm.
is to just have a relationship and be bold enough to share your faith and to listen and learn about what other people believe so you can direct them
Yeah.
to Christ.
Well, one of the things that surprised me, I remember I was in a taxi coming back from the airport to my apartment when we were over there. I had been met up by a friend of mine named Jeremy. You've met Jeremy a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in the cab, and I'm thinking, oh, we're just gonna kind of small talk with each other. And he's chatting with the cab driver, and within a few minutes, they're talking about Jesus. Hey, do you know about Jesus? Tell me what you know about Jesus. Tell me about your background. And I'm watching him do this. I'm watching him do evangelism. I'm thinking, this is how they do it here. You could do this in America.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same, you know?
It's not complicated.
Yeah.
You know, we have been conditioned to not talk about two things. Don't ever talk about politics and don't ever talk about faith,
Mm-hmm.
because those topics tend to make people feel uncomfortable.
Right.
They make people, and they're uncomfortable, I think, because it challenges us to actually think through our worldview, and nobody wants to address their worldview
Right.
anymore. But we've got to be able to talk about that. We ought to be
Yeah.
able to talk about our faith, especially if we believe that if they don't know Jesus, they're going to hell. Like
Yeah.
that's it. They've accepted death.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
yeah, so you learned how to do some of that over there in Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
You've clearly have been able to you've taken your faith back with you as well.
Right.
You know, I know that your faith has grown. You know, when we were talking some yesterday, and just throughout when we've spoken, that there was a big identity piece
Yeah.
that kind of felt like it was ripped out of you when you.
Yeah. So to rehash, I guess it's so weird that we had this
I know,
conversation
I
yesterday,
know.
but it's cool. So we were over there for not a super long time, and it's been a long time since.
Mm-hmm.
So after we did a training school called School of Strategic Missions, this was another YWAM Youth with a Mission
Mhm.
school. That was not at Kona; it was in Nashville.
Also cool.
Wonderful place. That's where I
Yep.
developed my love for sweet tea.
There you. If you get anything out of Nashville, get the sweet tea.
After being in Turkey a few years, Elizabeth was pregnant with our first child, Zeke. Right? We felt strongly in prayer that we should have the birth in the U.S. And in retrospect, I am so glad God sent us there, because it was a difficult birth. And knowing a little bit about Turkey and having friends that have had difficult births over there. If it was in Turkey, he'd probably be an only child. And as it is, we have 6 kids.
He is not an only child.
So
Not.
it would have been a very, very different story.
Yeah.
When we were in the U.S. having Zeke, I was so stressed out that we weren't in Turkey. And I was looking at when can we get back? How do we get back? How's the fundraising going to work? How much money do we need now? Where are we going to live? And I was freaking out. And I remember vividly praying in the loft of my in-laws' house. And God said, Mark, you need to let this go. I was like, let this go. This is my call to mission. This is like what my life is built around, you know? And God asked me to let that go. And it was not serving God. It was just, you got to let go of getting back to Turkey right now. And it was a hard choice to make, a hard thing to set down, but there was such a release at that point. Well, we still worked with YWAM for like 7 or 8 years after that. But that, for me, that was when God asked me to let go of living in Turkey.
Yeah.
We've never lived there since. We took one trip back after Zeke was born when he was about 2 and Jeremiah was about 6 months old. We took an outreach from a prayer school and we visited different houses of prayer within Turkey. And that was just a couple of months. And that's the last time I set foot in Turkey. So my other 4 kids have never even breathed the air in Turkey, right? Never had a Turkish tea or a bite of baklava or bodek over there. So we really want to take them back.
I'm sure.
Just to experience what we experienced, but to meet the people. And I would still love to get back overseas to do ministry, whether it's a short-term thing or a long-term thing. That hasn't left me, but there was a time when God asked me to set down living there. And yeah, that was a part of my identity I kind of had to let go of.
Yeah, sometimes those things we create expectations, no matter what it is in life. We create expectations, they can become idols for us, and it's God's goodness that he takes those things out of us, you know. And we've talked about too that through the church, we'd like to be able to do short-term mission trips where you take a group of adults over somewhere, where I take a group of adults over somewhere, and the different staff members, and that just is going to take money to be able to fund trips like that, both for the staff to be able to go, and then also to help teach others how to raise the funds for it. But we will eventually get there, prayerfully, we will eventually get there, so that we can do that. Because I think that would be awesome to see you lead a mission trip with adults to expand their worldview, and their biblical Christian worldview, to realize that the church is bigger than just what they see right here in St. Joseph or in Champaign County, et cetera. It's bigger than American politics. It's bigger.
Yeah, it changes you to go over there.
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing to realize, right? Because if I was like an accounting, enthusiast, right? If I wanted to look at how much value you're going to get for the dollar, then the amount of money it would take to bring a group of, 5 or 10 Americans overseas somewhere, that amount of money could do a lot more if I just gave it to a missionary over there. That would do a lot more than the ministry we could do, right? It's not like we're bringing over know-how they don't have, right? They've got construction, they've got plumbers, they've got all this.
That's right.
But what happens when you go overseas, and you don't even have to go all the way over there, but for now, what happens when you expand your vision like that is it changes you.
Right.
And it is as different as color TV and black and white TV.
Yeah.
Just seeing how different people live and how different they think, even within the church. The things that are a big deal here, they're not the same things that are a big deal there.
That's
the
right.
things churches fight about here are not the same things the churches fight about there. What people go through on a daily basis, what they give up, it is so different. And if you talk to people who are in ministry overseas and you say, "Oh, what lit that fire in your belly to come over here?" A lot of them are going to say, "I went on a short-term trip."
Mm-hmm.
So it would take a lot of money to send people over there, and it's going to look like a big number. And you're going, "Oh man, wouldn't it be easier to send a check than to send us over here?" But it's inherently different when you go. You're going to have such a different outlook.
Right.
You're going to come back, and it's going to change the way you look at your 9-to-5 job. It's going to change the way you look at your kids. It's going to change the way you look at every church or faith-based event you ever go to or serve at. It's going to change everything.
Right. The value you place in it is different.
Yeah, it's really a big difference.
This is why, too, when we talk about us getting to the point of taking adult groups overseas, why I'd rather us go to one of our missionaries and support them and love on them and care for them, speak into them, so that when we come back, we're bringing in that missionary's heart.
Yeah.
We can spread that. We can share that. All of a sudden, you have more people who are connected to the missionaries that we support, that recognize their mission and what they are doing, rather than us just going over and saying, like you said, it's not about us having the know-how.
Yeah.
And not just going over saying, okay, I'm going to build this and this and this, which really on a lot of missionaries puts more work on them to figure out what jobs they're going to have visitors, come and do. And it's just, there are some missions I think that work and function and thrive on that, especially in countries like India. I have a friend who's, he is Indian, and he runs an orphanage and a leper colony and does all kinds of like televangelism, all sorts of stuff.
Cool.
Pretty cool guy. In India, but he thrives on needing short-term missions to come through and do stuff. But that's not the same, or I don't even think is typical for most missionaries.
Right. I've definitely known people who said, there's a short-term team coming, and they're thinking, well, we want them to do real ministry, but we also want them to leave happy. And and ministry and leaving happy, that doesn't just happen. It takes a lot of planning. You just come from the U.S. and show up somewhere. You could easily just have a week of sickness and leave miserable and have a bad taste in your mouth permanently.
That's right.
Yeah, so partnering with people on the ground who have know-how, who know where they can plug you in a way that you can serve, but also in a way that you can learn, it's going to make a huge difference.
That's right.
And as I've seen you interact with some of the missionaries that we're connected with, that always comes up,
Yes.
Is this somewhere you'd be willing to take a short-term team? Would it even be a blessing? Or would it just be us showing up and now we're the disaster you have to deal with?
Right. We don't want to be the disaster. We want to go and be a blessing. And yeah, I mean, I actually just earlier today, I haven't responded to him yet, but, received an email from the missionary that we support in Kyoto.
Okay.
And of a lot of them, a lot of the places that we support, that's one of the places I would want to go.
Oh yeah.
Because I'd lived in Japan. I never got to go to Kyoto at all, but I have a heart, just like you have a heart for Turkey. I have a heart for Japan. And I was over there in the same city where my brother and sister-in-law were the missionaries, but I was not following God at the time. And I probably did a lot more damage to his mission. I did a lot more damage to his mission than I thought I was doing, Sure. But I'd love to be able to remedy some of that and to actually see the Japanese people come out of Shintoism and atheism and actually follow God. That would be awesome. So that's the one I would love to go to. I'm looking forward to responding to his email, and we'll get there.
Yeah,
we'll get there. So I'm looking at the time, and we're going to have to close up. I know you got some things to do, and I've got kids I need to go pick up at school. So Mark, I want to thank you for doing this again.
Yeah.
I do want to encourage people to look up Youth with a Mission.
Yes.
because that is a fantastic organization. It's one that I've been around. I've not been a part of, but I've been around YWAMers for a long time now. It's like any parachurch organization. It's not without its faults.
Yeah.
And a lot of that depends on the leaders at the different bases.
Right.
But it is a fantastic organization.
Yeah. I had a great experience with YWAM, and all told, probably about 13 years spent in YWAM, right?
Yeah.
There's some breaks in between for childbirth and whatnot, but it is a great organization. There's no perfect people. They've all got their flaws, but they're all really great folks. If you wanted to get involved with YWAM, you can look them up and see if there's a YWAM ministry close to you, or you could find someone with a connection. And I could help you find kind of where you're looking for. It's not like McDonald's where they all have the same menu. Some places do local outreach. Some places do training. Some places do very specific outreach, like, midwifery or intercessory prayer. Yeah. So every campus is different. So you can look it up or find someone that you know.
And I don't think it's even terribly the initial cost for you to join and go on a DTS, to go to the 3 to 4 months training and then to 3 to 4 months overseas somewhere. It's not an outlandish cost at all.
No, I haven't looked very recently, and it'll be a little different campus to campus, but it's something like probably about $4,000 for the 12 months of lecture, 12 weeks of lecture. And that's everything. That's your food and your room and board and your training and everything.
Yeah.
And then a similar amount, probably about another $4,000 for your overseas outreach. And if I'm way off on that because air travel is more expensive than it used to be, then I apologize. But when I did it, it was a little bit less than that. But I want to say that's something like what it is now.
Yeah, it's a fairly, given the cost, it's a fairly inexpensive. It's a good place to go to gain training in the mission field. And they have connections all over the world. And so you're not limited on necessarily where you can go outside of whatever the governments are and their borders and controls. So
they're also, they're not within one denomination. Now, they're evangelical Christians, right? So these are, from Baptist to Pentecostals, right? These are all evangelical Christians. They're not Mormon or Jehovah's Witness Christians, but that's going to go into the experience being different. You could be at a campus that's run by people with a Baptist background or people with a Pentecostal or a Foursquare background, but they're all followers of Jesus and read the Bible, and it's amazing. You wouldn't think so, but they can all work together.
Crazy.
I know.
It's crazy.
It's not just a brawl based on the things we disagree on, but they do some very good, very effective ministry, despite being from very different backgrounds.
Yeah. So if anybody's watching this and you're interested in it, or if you have a teen that might be interested in going, it's not even just teens, it's adults too. They have places for adults to go and get plugged in. We're not endorsing, we're not, whatever. We're just, I've been around YWAM for a long time. I think it's awesome that Mark has come out of YWAM. And so that's a commonality that I think he and I can have the same kind of conversations about it. It is a great organization. There are a lot of others out there as well that I think are fantastic for missions training. Would encourage missions training, especially if somebody's going to take a gap year after high school. Why not send them to do something like this?
Yeah.
Why not? It may actually change their life.
Yeah, for sure. Within my family, they didn't require this, but it was actually a requirement in my family. You're going to take at least a year to pursue God before you go pursue everything else. And it's made all the difference.
And now look at you. You've realized that pursuing God is the only thing worth pursuing.
Yes, I'm still in that year.
That's right. It's a good year. It's a good long year. I feel like that's a Russell Crowe wine movie. I don't know. All right. I got to go get my kids. Yeah. I keep chatting with you, and I know you got stuff to do. So, Mark, thank you again.
Yeah.
I appreciate your patience and your grace.
I enjoy these conversations.
I do too. I look forward to more of them.